Welcome to Excel Heaven. This tutorial is the second in a series looking at the lookup functions in Excel. In the first tutorial, we looked at the theory behind Vlookup, its parameters, and the importance of always using the range lookup, usually with a value of false, to get an exact match in our lookup. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you ways to make the function easier to read, and situations where a range lookup value of true for an approximate match is appropriate. So let's pick up where we left off. I have my invoice, and as the account number changes, the name and address on the customer updates. If an invalid account number is entered, the NA warns us that something is wrong. Looking at the Vlookup function in cell C10, I can see that it is made up of 4 parameters: the lookup value, the table array, the column index number, and the range lookup. These roughly equate to the what, where, offset, and how of the function. But it isn't too obvious, particularly for someone who may be taking over the model, exactly what the different elements are. It would make much more sense if it just read better. This is one area where range names are very useful. Let's take it piece by piece. The first parameter, the lookup value, points to cell G6. So I will select G6 and in the name box type customer account. The table array points to cells A1 to E19 on the customer's sheet. I will select that region and again in the name box call it customer list. On the invoice sheet, cell C10 again, I can now use these names to replace the cell references. In the formula bar, I select G6, use the F3 key to display the list of named ranges, and select customer account. Likewise, I select A1 to E19, use F3 again, and select customer list. The function now reads, look up the customer account in the customer list and offset to the second column. That makes much more sense. I can now copy the function down and edit the offsets. But this is the third time I've had to do this. On the basis that it is better to avoid absolutes in a function, I can introduce a new offset column away from the print area of the invoice. In this column, I can put the offset values which will be included in the functions. I can now reference the value in the offset column and copy the function down without the need to edit each individual cell. This makes it easier to make any amendments should the structure of the customer list change. For example, the phone number might be put in after the company name, which would push the address out further. This would mean that the 3, 4 and 5 would change to 4, 5 and 6. That is a much easier change than going into each cell and editing them. Let's move to the body of the invoice. On the product sheet, you can see that I have a list, similar to the customers, which show some of our products. Each product has a product ID and some details relevant to the products. I have already named the ranges product ID and products for the whole table. On the invoice, I have included a drop-down under product which picks up the product ID range. This is done through data validation, but please see the separate tutorial for details of how to set that up. This results in a pick list to make input easier. The point being that another Vlookup is used to get the product description, again showing the usefulness of this function. I have also included an error check so that should the product code be left blank, no error message displays. You will notice that I have included a price in the product table, but what happens if I were to offer a quantity discount? On the discount sheet, I have included tables for just 3 products. As the quantity hits certain levels, a discount kicks in. This is a situation where the true value for the range lookup is valid. Let's look at it more closely. Again, I start with equal V and double-click on Vlookup on the drop-down. This time I'm using the order quantity for the lookup value. This is for product 59751, so I can highlight that range for the table array. The offset will always be 2, and this time the range lookup is true. I can now fill in the other rows with various amounts, and you can see that as the volumes hit each threshold, the unit price decreases. Before we look at this in detail, please note that each material has its own price structure, with their own named ranges to make them easier to refer to. Thus, P_59751 is the range for the first material. To examine how the Vlookup works with a true range lookup, let's take cell F18. The lookup value is the quantity ordered, here 40. The table array is the price structure for material 59751. The offset is just 2, and the range lookup is set to true. So the function scans down the 59751 price structure. It passes 25, and because the next number it finds at 50 is greater than the 40 it is looking for, it falls back to the 25 price point, because it is only looking for an approximate match. From this and the previous video, and the use of an invoice as an example, I hope that you now have a good insight on how to use the various forms of the Vlookup function. Remember to always use the range lookup parameter, either true or false, to definitively state whether an approximate or an exact match is required. Don't forget to use range names whenever possible to make reading the function easier. Please check out the other tutorials on some advanced uses for this function. Thank you for watching, and subscribe to Excel Heaven for other tutorials.